Okay. Okay. Well, let's get started because we don't have a huge amount of time, and I'm sure it'll go fast very quickly. Welcome everyone to this Building Resilience evening. I'm Jim Jones, and I'm speaking to you from Mount Wolf Farm, but I'm here in my capacity as an associate of the Oak Ridges Institute of Applied Sustainability, which is not a name that you might have heard very much about. But I'm going to speak to you a little bit more about that later. Tonight really is all about talking about, oh, there's more people coming. Tonight really is all about resilience and building resilience. And I'm sure at the moment, many of you are feeling like you need a good bucket load of resilience to get yourself through this thing that we find ourselves in the middle of, which is this pandemic. And it's I hope you're all doing well. I hope you're feeling well. I hope all your loved ones are well. My brother from England, he's a doctor, and he has COVID and but is doing really well. So that's a good thing. But it just goes to show that these things can sometimes throw themselves up, and we don't expect them. And tonight really is all about starting to talk about these things. How we can become more prepared for these shocks, and ultimately we're talking about climate change, and these talks were originally going to be focused on climate change, but it's an interesting thing that some of the things that we can talk about being resilient to climate change are the same things that we can talk about being resilient to COVID and to the pandemic. So this evening, what's going to happen is we're going to have a number of speakers, and I'm really pleased that we've got such a really great selection of speakers, just to give you an idea about some of the issues that are facing us, including climate change. But we've also got our co-hosts of this series of workshops, of which today is the first one. We've got 4 workshops in all, and this is kind of an introductory, getting to know each other and getting to know the issues night. But our co-hosts with ORIAS are the Palgrave Rotary Club, and we've got Jeff here to talk, who is the chair of the Palgrave Rotary Club, and he's going to talk a little bit about them and some of the work that they do. So I'll just quickly share the agenda for this evening. So hopefully you're seeing that on your screen. This is the wonders of Zoom. We're going to have just a brief welcome from me, which I've already done. Welcome. And I should also mention and acknowledge the fact that while this is on Zoom, I am actually speaking to you from Mount Wolf Farm, which is on the traditional territory of the Mississauga of the Credit First Nation, and I'm very humbled and grateful to be living and working on this land, and thinking of resilience from that perspective as well. So today we're going to, in just a brief minute, we're going to have a chat from Jeff, president of the Rotary Club, and then I'll be back and talking a little bit about, it won't be Deb, it'll be me talking a little bit about ORIAS and what we do. Then we're going to have a series of community speakers, and I'll introduce them one at a time as they come along. And we're going to come back to me just to talk about what resilience is, because there are many different sort of explanations and understandings about resilience. A little bit later, we're going to have some breakout sessions, if I can work the technology properly, which is going to give you a chance to have a little bit of a discussion with people who are here tonight, maybe some people you haven't met before, about what climate change means to you, what you understand by resilience, and identify something in Palgrave that is that you think might embody resilience. And there'll be some people in each of those workshops who will take notes, but by all means take notes as well. And then we'll come back and share the thoughts and talk about what the next steps are before the end of the workshop. And I should just say, this is, this is reiterate that this is the first in a series of 4 workshops. This is a getting to know the each other and the situation. So anything that you don't get out here tonight, you can email me and we can hopefully answer some of your questions, or you can bring it to the next workshop, which will be in February. But that's all I'm going to say for now. I am now going to pass it over to my colleague Jeff from Palgrave Rotary, who's going to give a bit of a welcome from the Rotary Club. Over to you, Jeff.
Thank you very much, Jim. And thank you to all of you for taking the time to be here today. I'm really happy to see how many people turned out. I think I'm sharing my screen. Is that true?
Yeah, we can see you. We can see it.
Okay, very good. Oh no, can you see my presentation?
We can, yeah.
The PowerPoint or not?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, sorry, I'll go ahead then. Right, so as Jim said, my name is Jeff. I'm the president of the Palgrave Rotary Club. And I want to tell you a little bit about our club, about Rotary International, our parent foundation, our partnership with ORIAS, and the goals we have for this partnership. Rotary International is a group of 200 clubs. It's a group of clubs in 200 countries, and we are 1.2 million members. We are united worldwide to provide humanitarian service, encourage high ethical standards in all vocations, and help build goodwill and peace throughout the world. You can see illustrated there, historically we focused on 6 areas of service around the world: peace and conflict prevention, disease prevention, water and sanitation, maternal and child health, basic education and literacy, community and economic development. These are obvious areas of focus for any organization striving to create safer, more equitable global community. However, there's something else that they share. They're all for naught if an addition is not made to their number. There's little sense in improving the conditions in which we live if we have no planet on which to live. The Rotary organization first recognized this officially decades ago in '91, when the Preserve Planet Earth subcommittee was created to consider how clubs and members could contribute to environmental initiatives. In the last 5 years, we've spent more than $18 million on environment-related projects. Last year, Rotary Foundation trustees and the International Board of Directors both unanimously approved a new area of focus: the environment, cementing the requirement to recognize the paramount importance of a simple fact: there is no planet B. In taking time to join us this evening, you've already demonstrated concern for the environmental issues facing us today. I'd like to introduce you to Sahar Mansour, a Rotary Scholarship recipient, researcher, policy analyst at WHO, the Selco Foundation, and founder of Bare Necessities, a zero-waste personal care manufacturer. She holds a master's from Cambridge in environmental policy and told the Rotarian magazine, based on the best scientific evidence available to date, we have less than 12 years to mobilize a complete conversion from fossil fuels to green energy, or we risk dangerously destabilizing the Earth's climate. The problem that we are facing is an urgent one. A finite deadline exists beyond which we cannot turn back. However, the first opportunity for service is also found therein, in education. The delivery of this message and the urgency associated with it are up to you and I, and to local organizations like ORIAS. Workshops like this one tonight are where the beginnings of positive and meaningful change stir. Many of you here this evening will be familiar with the work Drawdown, the most comprehensive plan ever proposed to reverse global warming. Drawdown models and ranks potential solutions according to their climatic and economic impacts. The list includes the obvious. Rooftop solar, an example, comes in at number 10. It accounts for just 2% of the world's energy production, but it's rapidly advancing and proliferating technology, the cost of which steadily declines. Number 3 is waste reduction. 1/3 of food produced is not eaten, much of it spoiling unharvested. In 2010, some trouble with my slide here. In 2010, where was I? The food waste in landfills deposited 800 million tons of CO2 into the atmosphere and 11% of the global total of methane. Drawdown lists some less obvious issues that align perfectly with Rotary's areas of focus: alternative cement, electric trains, family planning, girls' education, plant-rich diets. Along the same vein, we must recognize the importance of returning to sustainable regenerative agriculture and a shift from the mega farm to the family farm, together with initiatives like community shared agriculture. These are broad solutions that all begin in the local community. Oops, there we go. They're demonstrated nowhere better than the greater Palgrave area's own Mount Wolf Farm. If you haven't heard about it already, I'll leave it to my friend Jim to highlight its merits shortly. I think one of the greatest obstacles we face here at home is the comfort we have with single-use plastics. An unsustainable linear economy and an unbelievably misguided belief that we can continue down this path indefinitely. This is our culture, and it will not change as a trickle-down response to federal policy or well-intentioned international treaties. Such grand efforts are essential and effective in part, but real change starts here, with you and I, with Rotary Palgrave and ORIAS, and with whomever you interact tomorrow. In 41, British chemist Yarsley and Cousins wrote, "The plastic man will come into a world of color and bright shining surfaces, a world in which man, like a magician, makes what he wants for almost every need." This was true, but was only one aspect of the dawn of the plastic age. 8.8 million tons of these bright shining surfaces have now arrived in our ocean. They're manufactured cheaply and with planned obsolescence, discarded and carried by the North Pacific subtropical gyre to the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. Pictured there, if you haven't seen it, it measures 600,000 square miles. That's twice the area of Texas. Consider also this slide, published in Life magazine in 1965, entitled "Throwaway Living." Here, a family is contentedly throwing away single-use items of all kinds, embracing the convenient disposability of the modern age. As it turns out, though, there is no place called away. Together, we can change these attitudes and literally save the world. It starts here by creating a more resilient Palgrave, the evolution of which can be informed by another global crisis, the COVID-19 pandemic. These crises require supranational response, coordination and cooperation of multinationals and national governments at the highest level. But the real solution is a grassroots one. To defeat a rampant virus, people the world around must don protective equipment, take their environment workshops online, distance, isolate, and work from home. Without these efforts, no legislation, policy, or vaccine research could be nearly as effective in the same time period. The solution to evading these twin potential disasters is to think globally and act locally. Rotary is perhaps best known for its efforts to eradicate polio. Past Rotary International President Barry Rayson spoke to the importance of how individual Rotarians are able to leverage their varying positions to effect change. He said, "You look at our polio eradication program. It's successful not because we've provided vaccines, but because Rotarians were able to talk to the right people, to give the right support, do the right thing. If we did that with the environment, governments would listen to us." The COVID-19 pandemic has demanded that we reimagine the structure of our society from the household to the highest levels. We now see urban dwellers moving to rural areas and telecommuting, confident that the change in how we work will be at least in part permanent. It brought to our attention just how small our world has become. It informs how we respond to the environmental crisis before us. While COVID response has sometimes required that a balance be struck between economic impact and public safety, climate change solutions do not require the sacrifice of jobs and/or economic stability. We develop resilience by eliminating waste and removing our dependence upon finite, diminishing natural resources. Necessity being the mother of invention, disruption of the linear economy will necessarily cause innovation, exemplified by innumerable novel and ingenious emergent technologies. From hybrid and fully electric vehicles to ocean Kleenex, autonomous underwater vehicles. My slide. Come on, slide. There we go. This awesome endeavor is a very global one at first glance, but it is important to note that these underwater vehicles are dispatched according to data collected from a smartphone app, one which employs human input to upload the coordinates of congested areas. Such new programs and ideas give us all hope to continue our quest for a better tomorrow. I've already alluded to some of the frightening aspects of climate change, but it is imperative that we remain realistic, positive in our outlook. Rather than mourn how only 5 of the top 15 global retailers have signed the new Plastics Economy Global Commitment, let us instead celebrate the fact that there are over 400 total signatories. They include Nestle, Pepsi, Coke, and Unilever. Terrifying is the thought of the environmental cost to society of marine plastics pollution being measured at $2.5 trillion per year. Let us be proud of the $6.5 billion in savings projected by 2030 from an EU directive limiting single-use plastics, one which our own federal government has promised to mimic. I hope that I've adequately outlined Rotary's role in this project. We're a very global organization, but one which recognizes that change begins locally. This is why the membership of Palgrave Rotary Club has chosen to partner with the ORIAS network, to help bring about the change necessary for the community's future success. I'd like to recognize another partner as well, the town of Caledon. We are together grateful recipients of the Community Green Fund grant and very proud to be part of a community that shares our vision. It is my sincere hope that this is an enjoyable and meaningful evening for all of you. The guests assembled are a very expert and knowledgeable panel with whom it is my honor to share this virtual floor. I look forward to spending the next little while with you and learning how we can build a more resilient Palgrave and a more resilient world together. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Thanks so much for that. And yeah, we're very happy to be partners with Palgrave. And as Jeff mentioned, these workshops are coming to you thanks to the town of Caledon and their Green Fund, which together we applied for the Community Green Fund to put on these workshops. These workshops actually grew out of some work that was done last year as part of the Caledon Community Climate Change Task Force, which we'll probably hear a little bit more soon from Christina about that from the town of Caledon. But what happened was that actually one of the events that happened from the Community Climate Change Task Force was a DIY climate change evening stroke garlic bar. And we liked the garlic bar bit, which was run at the Palgrave Community Kitchen. And we had some conversations at that point around setting up a more regular community meeting about climate change and about resilience. And so we decided to put in an application for some funds, and here we are. And that meeting happened a year ago last year. So we're very pleased that it's only taken a year to get around to doing this. So but just a little bit for you about ORIAS and who ORIAS is and where they come from. So it's basically ORIAS, which stands for Oak Ridges Institute for Applied Sustainability, has its roots in, as you can tell, the Oak Ridges Moraine, which is a peri-urban protected working landscape north of Canada's largest city, Toronto. For ORIAS, the Oak Ridges Moraine is a living laboratory for exploring systemic changes required for dealing with some of our most pressing sustainability orientated issues like climate change. So the ORIAS was founded in 2008 as a sister organization to Save the Oak Ridges Moraine Coalition, and we'll be hearing a bit from Deb Crandall from Storm a bit later on. So ORIAS was created in order to allow for Storm to focus much more on environmental advocacy. So ORIAS's mission is to conduct, interpret, and disseminate community-based research on resilience, social innovation, and sustainability to inform policy development and decision-making within linked social and ecological systems. It started as a partnership in 2018 between the University of Waterloo, and which I'm a PhD student of Queen's University, and Mount Wolf Farm, and the directors are from the University of Waterloo, Dan McCarthy. From Mount Wolf Farm, we have Deb Crandall, and from the Queen's University is Graham Whitelaw. So yeah, we'll be running these workshops going forward, these 4 workshops, and together with some other workshops that are hopefully going to be set up in the long term. So I would just like now to welcome Christina, who is the manager of the energy environment at the town of Caledon, who is going to give us a little bit of an overview about, I hope she's going to give us a little bit of an overview about the Caledon Climate Change Action Plan. So over to you, Christina.
Great, thank you so much for having me. I hope you can see my screen okay, Jen?
Yeah, we can see your screen fine. You might need to put it in presenter view. That's it. Brilliant. Can see everything.
Oh, great. Thank you so much for having me. As Jim mentioned, I'm Christina Guido. I'm the interim manager for the Energy and Environment Division at the town of Caledon. It's great to see so many people online. I'm really excited about this workshop and really happy that the town of Caledon's Community Green Fund could help support this initiative. Some of you might know my manager, Caitlin McFadgen. I'm currently covering for her, but she'll be back in March. And just to touch on the climate task force, that was led by Ali Service from the Energy and Environment Division. I don't know if any of you have interacted with her. She's currently off on maternity leave for a year, but she's really taken, I'm really proud of the work that she's done with the town's upcoming Climate Change Action Plan update. And she really took the community engagement piece and really built a strong connection with the community. Also, I did see that my dad has joined on the line to watch, so I hope to do him proud. So yeah, I'm here to talk about the Community Climate Change Action Plan. It is still in draft, so we are planning on taking this forward to council hopefully very soon in the next couple of months. So I'm here just to give you a bit of background on that plan and talk a little bit about climate change in Caledon. So first, I guess we had a pretty busy 2020. So last year, Caledon Council in January actually declared a climate change emergency, and that was with thanks to Eco Caledon and other community residents who brought this forward to council to declare this climate change emergency. So this really just shows what the community can do and get done in a municipal government. And following that, in June of last year, we set a pretty ambitious emissions reduction target, which is actually one of the most ambitious in the region of Peel. So we have a community-wide greenhouse gas emissions reduction target of net zero by 2050. So we know that's going to come with a massive level of change. It's going to be quite the challenge, but we're going to do everything that we can to reach this target. So why are we doing this? So we know that climate change is already happening in Caledon. So we actually love to show this slide. It's just with some screen grabs from some of the more extreme weather events that have happened in Caledon throughout the years. So we definitely know that climate change is happening. One of the most extreme events that we had was actually the Bolton flood in early 2019, which forced more than 200 people in that area to evacuate their homes. So what we've done is back in 2018, we undertook a risk and vulnerability assessment. So we worked closely with a consultant to project out to 2090 and see what Caledon's climate would likely be and what some of those impacts and risks are. So we do know that the climate will continue to change. Caledon's going to get wetter, it's going to get hotter, and this is in line with other climate projections for Ontario. So we updated our greenhouse gas emissions inventory. So the most recent baseline year is 2016. So you might ask why now that's 5 years ago. It's basically due to data quality. So that's the year of greatest data quality that we could get. So if you take a look at the graph, the pie graph on the left-hand side, the pieces of the pie that are in the blue colors, I don't know if you can see my mouse as well. So the 29% and 25%, that's emissions in the community from transportation. So we know that transportation emissions in Caledon are our biggest area of concern and biggest opportunity area, actually. And in the pie graph, the pieces of the pie in green, that comes from building energy consumption. So the darker green is residential buildings and the lighter green is commercial. The smaller pieces of the pie in Caledon's emissions inventory come from waste and agriculture, industry emissions, and then a small percentage from leaks and losses. So this year we also undertook, last year in 2020, we also undertook a study to project what Caledon's emissions might look like out to 2050. So we know in a business as usual scenario, so that's considering all current policies at the local, regional, provincial, federal level, that we can anticipate Caledon's emissions to rise by 119%, and that's if no further action is taken. What we've projected out, what we've actually modeled out, what the actions contained in the Caledon Climate Change Action Plan update is an emissions reduction of about close to 80% is what we can get out to 2050. And then the rest of it we'll have to make up through carbon sequestration, or we'll have to update our modeling as newer technologies come out. So we do know that there is a piece of this pie that we won't necessarily be able to address with current technology today. So that's why our emissions reduction target is net zero by 2050. That net will need to make up through other alternatives. And I guess what's driving, the key factors that would be driving the increase in emissions is from transportation. Transportation emissions are expected to project about 130% out to 2050. And that is in a business as planned scenario with no additional action being taken. And emissions from residential buildings are expected to grow by 58%. As you know, Caledon's population is expected to significantly grow. Right now, we're at about 72,000 population, and we're anticipating by 2040, 2050 for that number to double. So we know that a lot of growth in population is coming to Caledon. And that's one of the key considerations that we built into the plan. So with that, so this just summarizes some of the accomplishments that we've had throughout the years. We know in order to reach a net zero by 2050 target that further significant action will need to be taken, but I think it's also important to recognize a lot of the work that has been done. So we've installed more than 22 public EV charging stations, and we're definitely have plans to keep expanding that. We've awarded more than 100 Green Fund grants, and that's both the community and school Green Fund. So what we really, what's important to us is to enable the community and empower the community to take action. The Energy and Environment Division is really just a small team of 3. So we don't have a whole bunch of resources. So it's really important to us to expand our ability to take climate action throughout the community. Through the town's tree seedling program, we've been able to distribute more than 180,000 trees to private landowners. We're working on a very localized climate action plan in the West Bolton community. We've established a sustainable residential home strategy for the new development in Mayfield West. So what that means is developers have actually agreed to build the homes in that area to be more energy and water efficient. We've developed the Green Biz Caledon program. So we've actually had about 11 businesses in Caledon sign up. And similar to Resilient Palgrave, we did a series of workshops with them to try and enable and empower them to reduce their carbon footprint in their own operations. We passed an idling bylaw throughout the community that town vehicles also comply with. You may not know about this, but we do have a partnership with the Peel Climate Change Partnership. So we work very closely with the Region of Peel, cities of Brampton and Mississauga, the TRCA and CBC on climate initiatives. And right now, one of the bigger strategies we're working on is a region-wide zero emissions vehicle strategy. And that focuses more so on light duty fleet. So right now, if there's any local businesses on the line, we have a short 5-minute survey out, and we'd really appreciate your feedback on electric vehicle charging stations. So you'll see more come out with that this year once we actually pass and complete that strategy. So taking further action, so building a resilient Caledon. So what is this Resilient Caledon Climate Change Action Plan? Well, we know that the difference between some of our corporate plans is this one is a community-wide plan. So we need support from several different sectors. So we know that we need support from different layers and levels of government, our local conservation authorities, but really this plan is a partnership between not only the town, but with other sectors throughout the community. So developers, agriculture, schools and youth, community organizations and businesses, and all together we will take action to implement this plan. And one of the things that we've done is we've actually married climate mitigation and adaptation together in this plan. So some other municipal climate action plans either focus on one or the other, but we wanted to take a holistic approach and look at both together. So looking at climate change holistically. So how can we mitigate the effects of climate change, but also adapt to the known impacts that we know are coming to Caledon? So this is just, once the plan is up and online, I thought this graphic is actually really great just to show the differentiation between adaptation and mitigation and where the synergies are and how they come together. So this is a snapshot of the 5 key pillars of the Climate Change Action Plan. So it contains over 60 actions in the plan as it stands right now, and we're focusing on smart growth, sustainable communities, agriculture and natural systems, low carbon transportation, and then resilient infrastructure and energy. So the next couple slides, I'll just walk you through what the goals are for each section and some of the key actions, not an exhaustive list, but just some of the key ones that I'd like to highlight. So the first section, which is smart growth. So it's ensuring that new communities are energy efficient, walkable, and resilient to climate change impacts. So some of the key actions is integrating climate change into the town's official plan. As you may know, the official plan is being updated for 2022. So we're actually working very closely with our planning staff to get a climate change section in the plan and consider new policies to address climate change. And developing a community-wide green development standard. This action will be extremely key to Caledon's context, just with the amount of growth that's coming. Basically, what a green development standard does is that it ensures new growth is as low carbon as possible. So looking even beyond the building and ensuring that it's a complete community that reduces the need for transportation. Sustainable community. So the goal of this area is to help build capacity among Caledon residents and businesses to ensure greenhouse gas emissions and increase preparedness for climate impacts. So this focuses more on retrofitting existing assets. So one of the actions we're actually working on in partnership with the cities of Brampton and Mississauga is developing a home retrofit program. So what that is that it would allow homeowners, if you'd like to undertake climate retrofits in your home, it helps to provide financial supporting options for you to undertake those larger retrofits. We want to work on enhancing emergency preparedness and response and expanding existing town grant programs, including the CIP and the Green Fund. So for agriculture and natural systems, the goal here is really to protect and enhance Caledon's natural and agricultural systems to sequester carbon, build resilience to climate impacts, and support a robust food and agriculture sector. So looking at implementing a tree protection policy, this is more so for urban areas. We do have a protection policy for more of our forested areas in Caledon. Creating an open space strategy. So this would help direct where we can have new parkland in Caledon. Restore natural features and proactively manage invasive species. So this would involve working a lot more closely with our local conservation authorities that we rely on pretty heavily to help us manage invasive species in Caledon. And then supporting community agriculture. So how can we support more local farms and food share programs and community gardens? Low carbon transportation, so helping Caledon residents and businesses to use low or zero carbon options for transportation. So that includes walking, cycling, transit, and electric vehicles. So we know that this pillar is going to be very important for us in reaching that net zero by 2050 target that we have. However, I do want to point out that getting transportation emissions reductions they don't only live in this pillar of the plan. There will be co-benefits with some of the other pillars. So the Green Development Standard will also help us reduce transportation emissions. So some of the key actions in this area is to invest in transit and active transportation, expanding the EV charging network, and just raising awareness on electric vehicles and education. And as a corporation, we're currently working on the town's first green fleet strategy. So we're planning out strategically of how the town can reach zero emissions in its own fleet. And finally, the last pillar of the plan is resilient infrastructure and energy. So the goal of this pillar is really to support low carbon and resilient infrastructure across Caledon, including diversifying our energy supply, ensuring core infrastructure assets are better able to withstand major weather events, and greening town buildings. So through this pillar, we'll look at more renewable energy across Caledon, how we can improve stormwater retention, embedding climate change into the design and maintenance of the town's critical infrastructure. So this will be really key to climate adaptation across the town. And we're also working on updating our corporate green building standards. So this would help determine how the town builds its own facilities. The first demonstration of this will actually be in the town's, the Caledon East Community Complex. We're working on an expansion to that building there, which includes a pool, fitness center, and library. So we're working very closely with the project managers at that site to see how we can make it as low carbon and energy efficient as possible. So we've highlighted some of the co-benefits with taking climate action in the town's climate change action plan. So what we've done is we've taken a look at the scale of new jobs and investments that will come with taking climate action. And we know for as much as we invest in climate action, the return will be double of the net benefit to the community. So this is just some of the co-benefits that we've identified in the climate change action plan. So new jobs and investment, cleaner air and better health, lower energy costs, enhanced public safety, greater habitat and biodiversity, and then more sustainable and livable communities. So this is just some highlighting how the plan will get implemented. So corporately, we're ensuring that there's alignment with other plans. So the town recently updated its economic development strategy. This is a long-term strategy out to 2030, and we were able to get alignment with climate change and have consideration and actions in there for climate change. Embedding climate change into the town's official plan, which is going to be very critical for us, as we know growth will be one of the biggest challenges to reaching emissions reduction. The town's also working on an asset management plan, so that'll be pretty crucial for us in addressing climate change as a corporation. Program delivery and financing. So taking a look at the existing Green Fund programs, they've been in place since about 2003. So we want to look at how we can update the Green Fund in alignment with this climate change action plan update and get deeper emissions reductions through those projects. Monitoring and evaluation. So we would look at reporting back to council on our progress annually, and also doing a deeper update to the climate change plan every 10 years. Every 5 years, we would also update the plan, but we would do a complete modeling overhaul every 10 years as well. And really the most important piece that I wanted to highlight is community participation and oversight. So just as we convened a task force with members of the public to help build the plan, we really want residents to help shape its implementation and hold the town accountable, as well as participate in climate action in their own ways. So that's it from me. What I've done is I've just included our email address here. Feel free to reach out to us anytime. If you have any questions about what you can do or any actions the town is taking, we always love to speak with you and get involved in any way that we can in the community. And you can find a lot of our resources online at caledon.ca/climate change. We don't have a separate social media account, so we do a lot of our posts through the town's main Twitter and Facebook pages. So if you're ever looking to see what we're up to, I encourage you to follow @YourCaledon on probably mostly on Twitter is where most of our updates would go. And yeah, I just want to leave you with this graphic, which we developed for part of the public engagement piece of the plan when we were first developing it. So we know climate change is scary, but the solutions are not. And really this plan will rely on the interaction with the community and exactly the work that you're doing here with the Resilient Palgrave. So I'm really happy to be involved and also to see so many people on the line. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Christina. Sorry, I just got 2 more people waiting to come in. Thank you so much for that talk. It's a really interesting one, and I have to say that we were very, Sarah and I were very pleased to be part of the Community Climate Change Task Force when it was in operation, and we were really impressed with the work of the climate change, the work that was going forward. I think the town of Caledon can sort of congratulate itself for being really at the forefront of some of this municipal work. But just to add to that, and I'm glad you added to it, Christina, as well, you know, the bit at the end that it does rely on people to be part of that, to be local communities, to be active and to hold the town to account as well when you know, we all have to be part of the moves towards more resilient communities. We've got time for just one question. Would you be happy to take one, Christina?
Yeah, sure.
Does anyone...
don't choose my dad.
No. I thought I saw Karen with her hand up. Is that right, Karen? Did you? Karen
No,
Hutchinson?
just I was just gonna clap.
Okay.
And I just put the wrong.
Okay.
icon.
Well, if we've got time for one question, but if not, then we'll go straight on, and we can have questions at the end as well.
I see Deb might have a question there.
Oh no, she doesn't get to ask.
Oh,
just a quick one.
Go on then, Deb.
Thanks, Christina. That was really excellent. I just wonder if each of those 5 pillars, if they each one have targets. So, and the whole target, the role of targets as motivators and as ways to monitor and all that stuff. If you could just kind of touch on that a little bit.
Sure, yeah. So specifically, the pillars don't have targets, but what we did do is we worked with a consultant to model out to 2050 what in a business as usual scenario would look like, and also a low carbon scenario. So we do have targets for individual actions, and we did provide that in the plan as well. So you can see how much percent, for example, switching to electric vehicles would have in getting to our net zero by 2050 target in a modeled out scenario. So that is included in the plan that you could, so we have it online right now in draft. It is being updated, and once it goes publicly passed through council, then we'll have the final plan online. In the draft version though, you can see it in there.
Okay, thanks, Christina. Right, we'll move along to our next speaker, just to keep to time. So I'm really pleased to say as well that one of the groups we're working with on this project is Eco Caledon, who have been working in Caledon for a long time, championing environmental issues. And we have Lucia Petta here, who's going to talk to us about some of the work that they do. So over to you, Lou.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Jim. Just going to present my screen. We all okay there? Everybody can see that? Perfect. So as Jim mentioned, my name is Lou, and I'm here tonight on behalf of Eco Caledon. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Eco Caledon, we are a local non-for-profit which was established in 1995. And along with our partners, we work to promote environmental programs in the town of Caledon. Some of the programs that we've worked on in the past include waste education workshops in partnership with the region of Peel, Paint a Picture for Clean Air. We offer a bursary to each of the 4 high schools in the area. We have Walk the Talk workshops. We also host the Caledon Day Kids Zone activities. We now have a subcommittee called Gratitude for Food, and some of you might know about our recent campaign called Just Eat It Caledon. And lastly, we are part of the global project Drawdown, and I have our own kind of little chapter called Drawdown Eco Caledon. So the fact is our planet is heating up, and climate change is a big deal and affects all living things on Earth. As Christina mentioned earlier, Caledon is not immune to the effects of climate change. And I thought, just for fun, I'm jumping on the Bernie Sanders meme bandwagon. And here are 3
Fantastic.
examples that—
Thank you for that.
I had to, I couldn't resist. Here are 3 examples that Christina had mentioned earlier as well. The ice storm of 2013, the flooding of 2019, and in January 2020. So there's no doubt that we are in for challenges which we must do our best to mitigate. Behavior change is at the heart of everything that we do at Eco Caledon, and solving the climate crisis is going to rely on, one way or another, changing human behavior. While many people claim that they care about the environment, their behaviors don't often align with their expressed environmental values. The past 30 years has shown us that better strategies are needed in order to engage more people in behavior change that has a positive impact on the planet. Research has shown us that the most effective behavior-based campaigns combine environmental learning about a specific environmental issue, along with the opportunity for community members to take action. And our goal at EcoCaledon is to make it as fun and easy as possible for people to change their behaviors in order to lead lives that are better for them and for the planet. So how do we engage more people in climate action and help build climate resilient communities? Engagement isn't one-way communication. It's about facilitating dialogue, creating space for the community to come together, to learn from one another, and to build their common vision for a beautiful, sustainable world. How can we work together with the people in our spheres of influence to create collective action? Now, one of the techniques or one of the projects that EcoCaledon engages in are these walk the talk workshops. And we call them walk the talk workshops. There's no specifics to it because we can do these workshops on any particular topic, whether it's climate change, energy conservation, recycling, food waste, carbon footprints, and of course, drawdown. We like to keep it simple. So knowing that the most significant climate actions can be achieved by behaviors that are easy and convenient for individuals and groups to implement. And we like to localize it. So when something is happening within our network, to our community, or to the people that we care about, the need for action is much more personal and urgent. I just want to give you guys a few examples of walk the talk workshops that we've done in the past. So obviously carbon footprints. The reality is that if everyone in the world lived like the average Canadian, we would need 5 Earths to support our current rate of consumption. And one thing we like to do is, unfortunately, give a reality picture to our participants, and we actually have them do the actual calculation of their own personal carbon footprint. Knowing what our carbon footprint is helps us maintain conscientious about the greenhouse gases associated with our day-to-day activities, including commuting by car or bus, powering the buildings we occupy, or growing and cooking the food that we eat. Our footprint is real and it's important, but it is not the only way that we affect the environment. On the flip side, we can think about our handprints, and handprints represent the benefits of our presence, the positive change that we bring into the world. And if footprints are what we unavoidably take, then handprints are what we intentionally give. A second example, like I mentioned earlier, is our Just Eat It Caledon Food Waste Challenge, which we just started about a week and a half ago. And this is another project that has been supported by the Town of Caledon Green Fund grant. And it's a 5-week challenge, and it aims to change food waste behaviors among Caledon residents by building awareness, building skills and knowledge, and getting more residents to take action around food waste. And lastly, as Jeff mentioned, Project Drawdown. Project Drawdown, you might be surprised to learn that what Project Drawdown found is that not only do the solutions to the climate crisis exist, but most of them are already in practice. And just by accelerating the use of the existing solutions, we can actually get to the point of drawing down carbon dioxide from the air. What we need is better ways to communicate the impacts of global warming within a solutions exist framework, and to showcase ways in which individuals, community groups, organizations, and governments can work together to scale up the solutions and move towards a more regenerative and sustainable future. So those are just a few examples of what EcoCaledon does specifically in the community. Traditionally, information about climate change is doom and gloom, and the problems seem way too large for us to manage. So what we like to do is leave people with this idea that we like to envision a world as a jigsaw puzzle. The world is a jigsaw puzzle. If we look at the whole picture, it can be quite overwhelming and terrifying. But if we work on our little part of the jigsaw and know that people all over the world are working on their little bits, that's what gives us hope. And that's from Jane Goodall. And that's pretty much, that's pretty much what EcoCaledon's up to. And we're happy to partner on this resilient Palgrave project and work with the residents of Palgrave. So if anybody has any questions about EcoCaledon, I'm happy to answer those as well.
Thanks so much, Lou. Does anyone have any questions?
Hi, that was a great presentation. Thank you. Can you just talk a little bit more about this Project Drawdown? I wasn't quite following that conversation.
Sure. So Project Drawdown is actually, it's called the most comprehensive plan ever designed to reduce or reverse global warming. And what it is, it's a group of scientists and policymakers who have come together to analyze the 100 top solutions to reverse global warming. So it's an actual book, but you can easily find it, all the solutions online. And each solution is ranked in terms of their ability to reduce emissions. So it's not about focusing on one specific thing, whether it's energy or food, it's about focusing on everything as a group. And there's 9 different sectors, including food, energy, transportation, building communities and building cities. So if you get a chance, just Google Project Drawdown. It's quite incredible. And that's actually where we've come up with our project around food waste, because reducing food waste is, as Jeff mentioned, the third most impactful solution under Project Drawdown.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Thanks, Lou. Yeah, Jeff's just put the link in the chat, so you can go there and directly click on that link to find your to find out about it. And I have the book. That's the book. It's a rather thick book. We'll be looking at possible drawdown. We'll be looking at that a bit more in our next workshop as well. So if anyone's interested, we can share those things with you. Thank you so much, Lou. Any other questions for Lou? No. Okay. All right then. Thank you so much. And this is really great. I mean, I hope you're really getting the idea that that the things are happening about the environment and climate in Palgrave, in Caledon, and there are some really great projects that are really useful and inspiring in terms of of getting to grips with local climate change and local resilience building that we can rely on to build our own kind of vision much more locally. I'm going to ask now Deb Crandall to step forward from Storm, if she doesn't mind. Are you still there, Deb? Deb is got a hat
I'm
on
here
today from the Save the Oak Ridges Moraine Coalition, and I've asked her really to come forward and tell us a little about how you can get organised, because if people have a particular passion around getting organised in the local community, Deb's had a lot of experience in that. So yeah, she's going to give us a bit of overview of getting organised. Thanks, Deb.
Thanks very much, Jim. So what I'm going to do, if it's okay with everybody, because I haven't printed off the slides, I'm just going to leave it in this normal view so I can actually see what comes up next. So hopefully that's not too distracting. So thanks again, Jim. Thanks for allowing me this chance to talk. And he asked that I really just draw upon my own experience and how Storm got organized. I don't know if everybody knows about Storm. It's a group that is over 30 years old at this point, and it was really a group of people that came together from Peterborough, Trent University, University of Waterloo, and local communities who basically put the Oak Ridges Moraine on the map in the sense of created a domain for it. And I'll get into that a little bit later. And in looking back at it and running it through as I've got here, this framework for affecting change, Graham Whitelaw is the fellow that Jim mentioned as one of the founding directors of ORIAS. And it was during his PhD dissertation that, which is called the role of environmental movements, the role of environmental movement organizations in land use planning. He looked at the Oak Ridges Moraine and the Niagara Escarpment. And he really said that there's a framework that that organizations that are effective go through, and basically agenda setting, so setting the agenda. And this is, his case studies looked at groups who self-organized themselves to become these agents of change. So one of them is agenda setting, the other is learning how to negotiate with government, with other decision makers. Another is conferring legitimacy and then implementing solutions. So these are just some of the activities that we employed without knowing that we actually employed them. And it wasn't until he was interviewing me for his PhD that I learned that what I was doing was something, like he told me what I had been doing in academic terms, and didn't know that we were doing it, but we were doing what the literature had said is actually important for getting results, which was kind of an interesting, kind of a mind bomb kind of thing. So getting started. So back in 1988, I've got the timeline at the bottom. Back in 1988, an opportunity came about for a hearing on the moraine. And in that hearing, it was a forum for people across the length of it to come together. And so it was that public forum, that starting point that we could look at each other and go, ah, so you're interested. Like, it was a time of recognition. And STORM, Save the Oak Ridges Marine Coalition, really organized around a theme of development pressures on the moraine. And this idea of having a simple label that can kind of, you can bring other people in is really, really important. There was an inaugural meeting that was organized by these community groups. And at this meeting, the idea of a coalition that was based on one thing, which is the Oak Ridges Moraine is in danger of being hurt by development as it was coming up from Toronto. So that initial meeting led to incorporation of Save the Oak Ridges Moraine Coalition. And this is when I basically came into STORM. So I was not actually at that first meeting. Carol Seglins was as our regional counselor, and she started calling me saying, you know, you gotta do something with this thing called STORM. And I'm like, yeah. So then I got involved, and I'm still here, and she isn't here any longer. Damn, Carol. And so what was, in hindsight, probably the most important thing is really building this, having a strong vision, and then supporting this vision with a structure and solid foundation. And I would say that it is that, not single-handedly, but very strongly, is why 35 years later, STORM remains a viable organization ready to spring into action when it needs it. And at the time, I found this work to be horrible. I didn't understand why they were in the weeds. I didn't understand this. I was not a committee person. I was a lone wolf. And here these people are, you know, talking about changing a "the" to an "a." In hindsight, really important. So what is the mission? What are the goals? What are the objectives? Having bylaws, setting up boards, really creating a very efficient working organization. Meeting schedules. This group of people for years met once a Saturday, once a month, all Saturday. They just came, and this is before internet, before anything. They all met at we met at a certain spot, and we just worked issues and created policy. Delegating tasks and beginning that outreach to people of like mind. Sorry. Let me just make sure I am. Yes, so this whole thing called setting the agenda and creating a domain. Back in 1989, 1990, the Oak Ridges Moraine was in Chapman and Putman. It was in these kind of resource management manuals, but there was no official plan. Nobody was talking about the Oak Ridges Moraine. And it was the setting the domain. I'm going to bring this picture up. This was John Fisher, who was doing his master's at Trent, took this very strange little drawing that I don't know who the author of that drawing was, and he put the watersheds coming up off of it onto the map. The first time that that connection between the headwaters and the watersheds was ever made. And in hindsight, this fundamentally shifted the entire the entire environment around land use planning, around the connections of headwaters to water, to land use planning, to watersheds. This was hugely important. And of course, that is that. So this is a hand drawing by Mason Kirkpatrick in King City for our book, and it shows the rivers coming off. So John Fisher, in doing this as part of his master's, was phenomenally important. So we got together, we created this map, and suddenly there's this thing called the Oak Ridges Moraine, and that gave us the opportunity. And what's interesting about the application to Resilient Palgrave is climate change. You know, we've known about climate change for a long time. And I would say that, yes, there's an urgency about it that is getting people to start act, but it was the hugeness. It's what was said in that jigsaw, the hugeness of this issue, when in fact, and I think resilience is a tool for us to ground this issue where we can start to put some action to it at the community level. And it's that in and of itself is what's really important. That allows us to set the agenda. And yes, the town has a great framework. Without us setting the agenda for ourselves, this is not going to happen. So we created this thing called the Moraine, and then we just started talking. Any opportunity. We participated in everything. Like they were, oh God, here come the storm people again. David Crombie, when he was the headed up the Royal Commission on Future of Toronto Waterfront, we just talked to everybody, and it became all about the Oak Ridges Moraine. And so one of the things is always advocating and always learning, and really participation. Cannot emphasize that enough. We were appointed to all these task forces. We continue to advocate. We were just in there working really hard. And we were successful through all of these different things to setting our agenda. The fact that we have Oak Ridges Moraine legislation is because storm, that was our mantra, and damned and determined we weren't going to get it. And in 2001, we finally got it. Let me just, sorry, I don't want to miss a slide. Knowing when to hold them. So it's funny enough, we are currently in the situation now where in land use planning at least, and in climate change, anything to do with environment, where we were back in 1995 to 2002, 3. Mike Harris, Doug Ford, pretty much the same kind of people. We knew that we had to keep our head down because we were afraid of losing what we had to. And it was part of the understanding that we started to develop strategies, and we started to understand how power moves, which is absolutely key to all of this, is understanding where do you make the difference, who do you talk to, who are your allies. Sometimes your allies are going to be your enemies. But it's when you get to that level of where you are, in fact, understanding the power structure is when you know that you're on your way. It was a real time of reflection, figuring out not only are we doing the right things, but are we doing the things the right way, which is really important. It's like, okay, that didn't work, let's try this. And it was, failure can be hard on you, but it's actually really necessary in order to understand, are we doing things the right way? And if not, let's do things another way. Again, learning how to brand the Moraine for maximum leverage was really important. Interestingly enough, it was hard for us to land on it, on what is the thing. And urban sprawl became, in fact, the thing that united us all. It affected everything. So urban sprawl became the mission to stop urban sprawl. So really, what's that message that will resonate and mobilize people? Resilient Caledon is one of those things. It's that opportunity to really use that to help mobilize. Almost done, Jim. Okay, so that's just more of the stuff. You can see in 2001, we started to really set the agenda, but I think I've said that. So when you become part of decision-making that you have, you've worked your way through what Graham's framework is, when you are actually, they call upon you to be part of something, recognizing that there's a new type of governance. And I think community groups have in the past, but what we have to do is we have to organize ourselves so that we are truly occupying that third pillar of the stool, which is community, private sector, and council. So I would say it's time for Caledon, time for, certainly for Palgrave, to rewrite Caledon governance, that we become, and from my experience, this is what's necessary, that we in fact put ourselves on the map as saying, we're here, you need us to be part of your decision-making, whether it's your official plan review, whether it's reviewing zoning bylaws, whether it is designing workshops, etc. We're here, listen to us. And the ticket to that is we help government implement the solution, which is exactly what Christina was saying, is that without people, governments will not be able to implement a solution. So the challenge is ahead of us. So just basically to reiterate, is learning the art of negotiation, and that means trade-offs. You're not always going to get what you want, but you start to understand that there are trade-offs in everything that you do. How much do you have to give up to gain a lot? Learning that decision-making involves stepping forward, taking responsibility, no longer saying, you know what, the government, I'm waiting for the government, I'm waiting for the town of Caledon, I want my councillor to do it. You know what, no, let's step into it, and we'll let them know when we've made that decision. Learning to sleep with the enemy when necessary. That's a hard one. People are still struggling with that. That's just basically the rise. I thought that had gone. So I just, I think Storm was successful and resilient. Palgrave will be successful when it stays true to its mandate, when it builds a strong foundation at the beginning, when we learn to fight the battle, in this case, local, regional, and global. One more slide. Building credibility through continuous learning and knowledge creation. So Jeff is a perfect example. He's become really knowledgeable about climate change, more so Jeff than before. So, just constantly learning. Knowing that you need to have fun, you need to enjoy, you need to trust each other. Storm, we liked each other. We enjoyed hanging out with each other. And most importantly is we never gave up. So there's my favorite little fox that says, thanks very much. And any questions or any discussion, I'm happy to do.
Deb, thanks so much. That's really wonderful. I couldn't have asked for a better overview of what it means to really get to grips with an issue and not give up. I think that's fantastic. Does anyone have any questions? If you could unshare your screen now, Deb.
I'm going to try and do that. How do I? Oh, there, stop share.
Yeah.
There we go.
Does anyone have any questions for Deb? You can always type things in the chat a bit later if you want, or we'll come together at the end for some questions as well. Now, I think what Deb was describing there, the idea of not giving up and having a theme and running with an issue, is something our next speaker knows a lot about. Many of you will probably know from the news, the Fridays for the Future, which was started by the activist Greta Thunberg. So we have our very own, I'm sure she's sick of hearing herself being described as the Orangeville's answer to Greta Thunberg. But Olivia, I'm going to ask you to talk to us a little bit about Orangeville Climate Action, if you would, and as another example of an organisation that really doesn't sit back and take no for an answer, bringing the themes forward and taking it to people in power. So yeah, Olivia, tell us about that.
Absolutely, Jim. And actually, we have two amazing climate activists here. I have a good friend of mine, Nicole, who'll be joining me to chat about our work in Orangeville surrounding areas. So yeah, just a quick intro. My name's Olivia, and I'm a grade 12 student at Orangeville District Secondary School in Orangeville. And Nicole, if you want to.
Sorry, I'm going to keep going. My name's Nicole, and I graduated from Orangeville District last year, so I'm studying at McMaster University this year. So, back to you, Olivia.
So we're really glad that we were able to come here today. It's so amazing to see all of your beautiful faces and coming together as a community to really, like everyone's been touching on, start a grassroots movement, which is really what we need. So just a little bit of, I guess, what we're doing, what we have done, and where we're hoping to go. So Nicole and I were big parts. Well, we worked with a few other individuals who unfortunately weren't able to be here tonight in organizing multiple climate strikes in Orangeville, one of which I'm sure some of you must have heard of was the September 27th global strike. And there were over 300 people who came to Orangeville. We marched down Broadway, right down our political representatives, right by their offices, down to town hall. We had amazing speakers come in. It was a huge event. And it was really just reassuring to know that we have a community who's really behind getting climate action at the forefront of our community's agenda, our government's agenda, individuals' agendas. And we've continued to try to push for that. Of course, strikes aren't really possible right now, at least in mass quantities. But our goal as Orangeville Climate Action is to really try and engage youth, local youth, in understanding climate change, in knowing that they have the potential and the power to act no matter how small it is. And a lot of the work that, because Nicole and I obviously we're in different parts of Ontario right now. So I'm going to dive into a little bit of what I'm trying to do in Orangeville, and then afterwards she'll touch on some things that she's doing in Hamilton at McMaster University. So I'm a part of, oh wait, we didn't touch on the election stuff, did we? Oh, sorry guys.
I can go through that quickly, Olivia. It's okay. We could have made it work either order. So as Olivia sort of, she went through with the strike in September of 2019, I believe it was, because this year we were in lockdown. So a few weeks after that strike, as you guys I'm sure knew, the October 2019 federal election for Canada was coming up. So we sort of shifted our focus to bringing, I guess, environmental policy and its accessibility to youth in our community. So we tried to gear our focus towards making sure that youth could understand and sort of still play a part, despite the fact that they're not able to vote, in understanding climate policy and climate change. So in order to do that, and without a biased opinion, we decided to interview all of the MP candidates in our area and ask about their views and their party's views, and just on various environmental topics and policies and movements. And after doing so, we compiled infographics and articles that were sort of easy and clear to see for people our age and younger and understand, so that they can still feel part of the election, even though right now they can't vote, but they will be able to soon. And you can see that. I'm sure Olivia's going to post our contact information in the chat later. You could sort of check out all those infographics and pictures from the strike on our Instagram handle. So during the pandemic, because as Olivia outlined, a lot of our focus was on community engagement and talking to people in person and getting people together for strikes and bringing youth together. A lot of our initiatives kind of came to a bit of a halt, which was definitely a rough patch because, like everything else, the pandemic kind of just shut everything down. So it was a little bit hard to, get back up to it, but pandemic doesn't really stop everything. So I'm going to hand it back to Olivia to talk about what she's doing right now at ODSS.
Thank you, Nicole. So at OD, right now we're online, which is what it is, but we're actually still running a lot of our clubs, the environmental club being one of them. And we've actually got a few really neat projects coming up. Soon we're starting a workshop to help students learn how to manage their finances ethically, because I'm sure, as a lot of you know, big banks in Canada specifically, are huge contributors to the success of the fossil fuel industry. So if students who really need to learn how to take care of their money can have the opportunity to connect with or at least learn about how to bank more ethically, that would create big change. And we've also built a pollinator garden at ODSS. We have written multiple, and are writing still, multiple letters to political representatives. And it's just a great way for at least high school students in the area to connect with each other and really be a part of a community that is willing to push for climate action, even just on, you know, the level that we're at in the school system. And I guess, Nicole, you can talk about what you're doing at McMaster. It's really exciting.
Sure. So I'm in a little bit of an interesting situation right now because McMaster is one of the only universities in Ontario that just fully shut down. So they don't actually have any students in person at all unless you're in like nursing or something like that. So I'm still in Orangeville. I'm living with my parents because it didn't make sense for me to move out. So I'm in a bit of a weird place because like I'm at McMaster, but I'm not really, like I'm still here and I still want to make a difference around here. So like I said, I graduated last year and I'm studying remotely, but I'm still trying to be involved around here. So it's kind of a weird sort of overlap right now, but I am part of a club at McMaster and they're called Zero Waste McMaster. And evidently from the name, we focus on the zero waste lifestyle or getting close to it. So every month we host a different workshop about a climate related zero waste kind of issue. And so for example, this month on Thursday, actually, we're talking about greenwashing. And then next month, I'm going to host one about food waste reduction. And the thing about these workshops is they're not just for McMaster students. So I get a lot of my friends from Orangeville to come out and I'm, you know, always kind of advertising them everywhere I go, which is really nice because I can still sort of feel that overlap and still feel connected during the pandemic to, you know, our community around here, even though it's, I'm sure, a hard time for everyone to feel connected to anyone. And, you know, our club in general is based on community engagement, Orangeville Climate Action, that is. And especially now with the pandemic, for youth specifically, it can feel really difficult to feel like you're making a difference. That's, I think, a difficult thing for youth to feel in general with climate change, just because, you know, you feel like small, like what can I do? So we're still trying, even through the pandemic, like if anyone knows any youth that want to get involved and are interested in climate advocacy that don't know where to start, we can, you know, help you get some connections and sort of pass the baton, because Olivia, of course, is going to be moving next year too. So we would be more than happy to sort of, you know, keep that going with more people. And I do not want to take up too much of your time. So I'll wrap up our presentation here. Well, sort of presentation. We didn't have any slides, unless Olivia has something else to mention. And thank you guys for listening.
Well, that was perfect. That's it. Thank you, everyone.
Wow, thanks, Olivia. Thanks, Nicole. That's really excellent, and I do commend you on your commitment to climate change, and it's really encouraging to see people not only becoming concerned citizens and active citizens, but actually teaching others to become concerned and active citizens, because I think that's one of the things that I hope that we can take away from this this meeting this evening, is that in order to deal with the issues of our time and the issues of times gone by, you know, people need to be involved and get involved and stand up and you know, ask, what can I do? And I think I'm going to be talking a little bit about resilience in a minute, and I think we'll find that actually during COVID, during the pandemic, people have been doing that, and it's we're learning a lot about community resilience at the moment from the pandemic. But before I do, does anyone have any questions for Olivia or Nicole? You can be certainly sure that you know, going forward in this workshop series, certainly if I'm hoping that we will engage with members of the you know, of younger people, engaging with schools going forward, that we might get some people coming forward who would really like to hear from you, Olivia and Nicole. So if not now, then later, definitely.
Jim, just a quick comment. Great work.
Sure.
That's amazing stuff that you're doing. Thanks for doing all of everything that you're doing. It's just amazing.
That was from Karen. Thank you, Karen.
Can I just ask a question, Jim?
Deb, please do.
I just want to know what kind of outreach you've done, or how effective your outreach has been with some of the other high schools or public schools outside of Orangeville. Or do you know? Yeah.
So that's actually something that we're really trying to work on right now. or more specifically, those of us who are still in Orangeville, we have gone into, or before the pandemic, we were going to have the opportunity to go in to speak to different public schools, but COVID hit. So it might be nice to organize something online. And really that's where we're at now in terms of trying to expand into other high schools, public schools in the area.
I just have
sorry.
Oh, sorry, Jim. You can go ahead.
No, you go for it, Christina.
Okay, no, I was just going to say an idea that came to mind. And sorry, I'll just backtrack. It's really inspiring to hear the work that you're doing. So I couldn't help but smile throughout your presentation. I thought that was, it's great to see. We have a local group in the region of Peel. They're called the Peel Youth Climate Council. So I'd like to connect you with them if you'd like and learn a bit about what they're doing and make that alliance with the region of Peel, across the region of Peel and Orangeville. And they're putting on virtual workshops as well. I think they had Diane Sachs present at their last one. So I can make that connection for you with them.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Thanks, Christina. That's really good. Yeah, I can vouch for them. Well, we can vouch for them because we did some talks from Mount Wolf Farm to the Sarah and I, and Deb as well gave a talk to them a little while back. I did reach out to the Palgrave Public School for this workshop, this first workshop, but didn't hear anything back. But I think most schools and teachers have got their hands full at the moment, haven't they? Dealing with the pandemic. So hopefully as things get easier, we might have some people coming along from the schools as well. So so the next thing I'd like to do is introduce myself again, if you're not bored with my face already. And I'd just like to give you a little bit of an overview on resilience and what that might mean. And to introduce resilience, I think I'm going to introduce these two characters who I'm sure you're familiar with, Calvin and Hobbes. Favorite characters of mine that always have something to say about particular situations. And at the moment, I'm sure it does feel a bit like life is about, is to stay balanced and staying quick and alert as everything threatens to spin out of control. And sometimes we don't always get it right, but the idea of being persistent and picking ourselves up and dusting ourselves off and going forward is part of what it means to be resilient, I think. Just hoping that I can forward my, here we go. That's another one of theirs. So what is resilience? Resilience is one of those words that's bandied about quite a lot. You hear it sort of mentioned in various different things. You know, we talk about resilient people, we talk about resilience communities, and it is quite a nebulous term that has a lot of interpretations. For instance, you know, in engineering, resilience is you know, quite technically described as this idea of a return back to the original state after a disturbance. It's got this idea of recovery and constancy, you know, continuing on in the same state. For things like in ecology, I'm a trained ecologist from England. We find that you know, the idea of resilience being a capacity to withstand shock, but still to maintain function. You think of a resilient forest that you know, catches fire and it has this big disturbance, this big shock, but it's eventually able to recover and come back to being the same thing as it was before. Now, in the integration between society and ecology and what we call socio-ecological resilience, there's this other thing, there's this interplay of disturbance and reorganization, and a really important idea is this idea of adaptive capacity and transformability. The idea that that you don't necessarily come back to exactly the same structure, but things have been learned. You're more perhaps you're even more efficiently adapted to the new characteristics of a new state. So here's a few more ideas. These ideas that resilience can be thought of as a resistance, holding the line against perhaps you know, in military terms, you know, holding the line against an enemy, or resilience, as we've said, bouncing back, getting back to normal. And these are kind of fairly reactive ideas about resilience. These are things that something happens and then you bounce back. But there's also this idea of resilience, as I said, as adaptation or transformation. This is proactive. This is thinking about change before it happens and moving through change to become something new, and actually owning the need to change, realizing that there's something ahead that we might need to change and adjust to. The World Health Organization has a number of different definitions: the ability to adjust to disturbances and shocks, the ability to manage and recover from adverse conditions, the ability to reduce disturbance and shocks by proactive action to minimize vulnerability. And also this, again, this transformative idea, the ability to develop systems better suited to change, uncertainty, and new conditions. It's kind of not waiting for shocks to happen. It's thinking about how we can be more resilient. Now, there's a lot of interest that's been that's happened with resilience, the idea of resilience, particularly following a number of different studies on events like Hurricane Katrina, the earthquake and subsequent tsunami in Japan, and the Christchurch earthquake of 2011. And I think it's a really fundamentally interesting and significant thing that the predictor of survival and recovery is the extent to which people know each other and feel a sense of duty and responsibility to each other. And that's something that's really key and characteristic of, or can be a key and characteristic thing of that binds communities together. And disasters and shocks like disasters like that's happening at the moment, you know, this pandemic, they don't just happen to individuals, they happen to entire communities. So we're exposed together and we must recover together. So there are a number of things that we can do to build our resilience to these shocks. We can develop economic resources to protect ourselves. We can reduce our risk and the inequities between the resources that we might share. We can look at conscientiously at our areas of greatest social vulnerability. So, you know, ahead of us, who are the people that are most vulnerable to these shocks? And it's a theme that we've talked about throughout this evening, which is to be resilient, you've got to engage local people in every step of the mitigation process. One of the key ideas behind resilience is this idea that we're all on we develop and generate the story of our environment and our network together. It's not something that's imposed on us. And I think that Deb talked about this earlier, this idea that some of us get into the habit of thinking that you know, we have these governments that vote for us, that we vote for, and we appoint to do the work. And it's almost like we can forget about things once we've appointed them to do the work. But these organizations need that progressive sort of interaction between residents to be part of that interaction, which makes community and community governance possible. The other thing is, you know, creating organizational linkages and relationships in advance of disasters. So amazingly, it's not necessarily there's been studies to show that it's not really the amount of money or resources that a community has that allows them to recover after shocks. It is that kind of strength of existing networks and support that is the best indicator of recovery. So what can communities do to build resilience? Oh. Communities can evaluate their capacities. You know, we can look ahead of time at what kind of strengths and weaknesses we already have. And so often with communities, it's all about kind of looking and pointing and saying, oh, what does that community not have? That community over there is lacking. And it's very often a much better way to look at the assets, the strengths that a community has to begin with. We can develop new capacities in relation to climate change resilience as well. We can learn from existing initiatives, and this evening is all about learning from people like Eco Caledon and from Storm and from the climate change, from the Orangeville Climate Change Initiative. We can make the most of the available resources we have and look out for potential pitfalls and solutions. But we can develop community participation and networks for longer term visions. And we can build on the local interests that we already have. It doesn't necessarily, building resilience isn't always necessarily to focus on climate change and what we can do with climate change. You know, things like, you know, anything that involves people coming together and talking and supporting each other is a way of creating local connections. Importantly, and it's something that Deb also mentioned, which strengthens Storm, was this ability to monitor what we are doing and evaluate how it's working. Without kind of monitoring and evaluation, it's very difficult to know where you are in a situation and how well you're kind of building your strengths towards the where you need to be. One of the other things that's really important is that in a participatory approach towards community resilience, it's not necessary to be an expert in climate change resilience or in climate change adaptation or mitigation. It's about kind of having an involved, interactive approach to being a citizen and wanting to get involved in how your community functions. I'm going to share some interesting, you know, we can already look at the Palgrave community and see the assets that we already have. You know, we have things like the Palgrave, the Albion Hills Community Farm, for instance. We have the Palgrave United Community Kitchen. We have, of course, Mount Wolf Farm, our own Mount Wolf Farm here. The Palgrave Trail Running Club, which I try and attend as much as possible. I know Nicholas here, and we have the local church and the Palgrave Public Schools. So we have a network of organisations and community support structures that are already in existence. One of the things that we might not have is a shared vision for tackling climate change and for some of these shocks. Some of the things that the COVID-19 pandemic can teach us, well, it's early days yet, but there have been some studies that are already done, and this is one that has already started to look at some of the things that we're learning. What the pandemic is teaching us is that what's important is for communities to develop their adaptive capacity. It's looking at how, you know, neighborhoods can self-organize to deliver food and medication for even simple things like dog walking, organizing well-being checks for those who are vulnerable. These are the things that are happening. These are how communities are engaging with each other through in terms of the pandemic, which will be important going forward into being resilient to climate change activities. Local communities can develop support networks, and actually what is happening, which is an interesting development, is that some formal agencies such as voluntary and community sectors, social enterprise or statutory organizations are being replaced by informal networks and of support networks. So it's not this thing about relying on external organizations sometimes to do the work that we need to do as engaged citizens and residents. Things like developing local community hubs. You know, some NGOs and local organizations have given their premises over, or even things like creating, you know, if you have a digital presence, allowing your digital presence to be used as a way of networking in times of need. I've got there an example from the UK, which was one of the NHS trusts, National Health Service trusts in the UK, actually went out and started repurposing used computers and gave them out to vulnerable people, so that those people could actually engage on Zoom and use online services. One of the most important things that COVID-19 is teaching us is this idea of cross-sector partnership working, particularly around mental health. It's the idea of not just one organization being responsible again, but actually lots of different organizations getting involved. And finally, this idea of, again, something that we've mentioned before, this transformation of the relationship between the citizen and the state, this idea that, you know, it's not just the state that's responsible for delivering services to us. It's, you know, us as community members have to engage with that relationship and not only tell, you know, develop the story of how we want our local community to be, but to engage with state services to envision that. So what are we going to do? How are we going to continue with this? Well, this is, as we were saying, this is the first of 4 workshops to really look at just as an introduction to some of the themes and some of the people that we can rely on and go out to and ask questions about. So this is really about creating a more resilient Palgrave. We don't necessarily know how that's going to work, but we know that we already have a lot of, as we've seen in the earlier slide, there's a lot of people already working to create a strong community. The next workshop that we're going to do after this is actually this workshop 2 here, which is a community asset and resilience mapping. Sorry, no, it's workshop 1. What am I talking about? Visioning and action planning. So what we're going to do in February, we haven't got a date for it at the moment, because I thought what we'd do is try and doodle poll and see if everyone here can make a particular day. And we're going to spend about 3 hours actually creating a vision and an action plan for Palgrave. Now we're going to do this by engaging with each of you as residents to find some of the stories that exist out there. We use this engagement tool called participatory narrative inquiry, which is actually all about learning what things are like now, how you could envision a resilient heaven, what Palgrave would look like if it was fully resilient, and what are the pathways and the steps to get there. And through doing that, we can help Palgrave develop an action plan for being more resilient. And I really hope that we can, and I envision personally, but it's not about me, it's about all of us, that we can tie into some of those really interesting things that are happening with the Community Climate Change Action Plan, and also with all the other organizations. In workshop 2, we're actually going to sit down and actually make a map. One of the things that Deb mentioned in one of her slides was how important that kind of scribble of that initial mapping of the Oak Ridges Moraine with all the rivers on it was really important for developing the vision for the Oak Ridges Moraine going forward. Well, we're going to do the same. You know, we're going to map the assets that we have in Palgrave. Where are the places that produce food? Where are the people that you can go to rely on if you know your house gets flooded or something like that? So we're going to use that workshop to make a community asset map. And then at the end, we're hopefully, if all things go to plan, and of course, you know, we'd normally be doing this in a church hall somewhere or something like that, so we could all be sitting around a table and sharing coffee and tea or whatever. But by the time I'm hoping that by the time we get around to having a climate change fair, that may be in the summer sometime, and we can have that and actually get together. If not, we'll find ways of doing it on Zoom, because that's the thing about resilience, isn't it? We just have to adapt. And I think we're all doing really well adapting here. So now, so that's the end of my those slides here. Does anyone have any questions? Any questions before we go? Because what we're going to do now is we're going to have a go at a breakout. If I can do that. No questions. Okay. So we're going to split up. I'm going to split you up into breakout rooms, and you're going to be in a group of about 3 or 4 people. It may be somebody that you know, it may be somebody that you don't know. I initially appointed some scribes and things like that, but what I'm actually going to do is randomize the whole group and see where we go. What I want you to do in your groups is just think about some of these questions here. I'm just going to share my screen. So the questions I'd like you to think about are these 3 things here. What does climate change mean to you? What do you understand by resilience? And identify something or someone in Palgrave that makes you identify with resilience. And just have a quick chat. We'll have what's the time now? So the time now is, yeah, we haven't got that long. So maybe about just 10 minutes to have a quick chat with each other, to get to know each other. And then we'll come back and we'll report and we'll wrap up and have some final questions going forward. Okay, so I am just going to put you in breakout rooms. Hold on a tick. This is where this is the first time I've done this, so. Hello, welcome back, everyone.
10 minutes was not enough.
10 minutes was not enough. No, 10 minutes.
It was good though. I met 3 people I've never met before.
Well, this is great. So the idea behind this is just to give you a taster. You know, like if you ate all the pie at once, and Sarah, don't say anything.
Something you've been known to do, my love.
Well, either Sarah, both Sarahs. Don't say anything about my pie habit. But if you eat all the pie at once, you won't want to come back for more. So the idea was just to give you a little bit of a taster. I'd like, if we can, in the few remaining minutes, just to get some feedback from any of the groups. If anyone feels like they would like to feedback. I'm not going to go through one at a time. I just thought if anyone has any feedback from their conversations.
I'll start off by saying one thing about our group. It was with Jess and Jeff, and who's the other one? Who? I can't remember. Jeff, I know that. And then Jess, who's the other person with Jess?
Brian.
Okay, hi. One thing that really appealed to me, because I've got 3 children and 3 grandchildren, is Jeff brought up the point about doing this for us, but also for future generations. And that made me, I didn't get a chance to say it, but one thing that really bothers me as a 70-year-old woman is when I think about sort of, I get pissed off and a bit shameful about the state of the world that we seem to be handing off to our kids and grandchildren. So if whatever we can do at this stage of the game to change that trajectory, I'm all in. But the other thing is that tackling this with small puzzle pieces instead of the whole puzzle is very encouraging and helpful. That's one thing our group thought up. And the importance of education is key to solving this big problem and encouraging resilience and fighting climate change. We had a small but very good group.
Sounds great, Sarah. Thank you. And I think some of those points are really, really, really pertinent. I think there was a book that was came out just recently, I think, called The Good Ancestor, which is all about being a really a good ancestor, you know, and thinking about the future. And it made comments about the fact that a lot of the way we do things in the world at the moment, specifically politics, is arranged around very short-termism. You know, there's no thinking about the future that much. So it's a really good point. Anyone else have any thoughts they'd like to share with us going forward?
Jim, I'll chime in here.
Hi, Kathy.
I was with Nicole and John. I agree with Sarah that it wasn't long enough. But a few things, I think we all understood that there shouldn't be any polarization of this whole climate change issue. There are some people who, for lack of a better way of saying it, I guess, they think it's just caused by natural forces, not by human action. But we feel that the issue should not be a polarized thing. And education is key as well. And we were just trying to grasp the whole idea of resilience. And I had trouble with it till the workshop today. And I see resilience, and we didn't get a chance to talk about that in our breakout group, but I wanted to add that resilience seems to me is all about connection with other people, other groups. So I think that for me gives me a good idea of what resilience is.
Yeah, I think that's really true, Kathy. It's at the heart of resilience is connection.
Okay.
Can I speak for my group?
Sarah, yes, please.
Sure. So we only got to the first question, but there's some interesting things did emerge about. I was in a group with Ian and with the Reeds. So that climate change can mean like a shift from one paradigm that is known into another, which is unknown, and the implications of which we also don't know. So that can be a bit, anxiety provoking. But with the recognition that behavior change is possible and that we have seen it in the past, so that's very encouraging. Movements around personal behavior change, specifically about recycling. So there's some focus around like hope with the kids, like if you can teach the younger generation to think differently and kind of look differently at the world, that's very kind of encouraging. I would also just like to add, we didn't get to this, but the notion of a personal carbon footprint is a very useful tool. But I think it's only one part of a greater whole, which is like we are personally responsible for our footprint, but there's also so much that we don't have control over, that there needs to be accountability from some of the more proportionally impactful players in the game, right? Like I think it's actually interesting to note that the concept of an ecological footprint was a marketing campaign from British Petroleum to shift the blame from the industry to the consumer. So like keep it that in perspective, that we do have agency and we need to demand accountability from these larger forces. But yeah, it was a good little chat that we had, and it was just nice to get to know you guys. So thanks for that.
Thanks, Sarah. Then thanks. Anyone else?
Yeah, I can talk about the chat Debbie, Karen, and I had for the first question.
Please
Debbie
do.
had very interesting input because she's a farmer, and she said that we're moving from 4 seasons into a 2-season, or rather in a drought where there's too much rain kind of time. So we're losing basically what we're used to, like the snow in winter and the moderate warmth in spring and summer and autumn. And this leads to crop failures, and seeing our essential food being under threat makes us feeling very fragile. And poorer areas in the world will be hit first by climate change. So we're all in it together, although it doesn't feel like very immediate for us right now. Actually, it is, and it is for other people even more so. And regarding the second question, what we understand by resilience, we collected the answer that it's the capacity to function in a new normal. It's a distributed network, and it's also the ability to withstand the mainstream. The mainstream defined as forces that make us believe that we have to consume more and accumulate more material things and mindlessly go out and accumulate and buy and consume without thinking about how we can do this sustainably, because humanity is growing. And instead of focusing of getting more, we have to actually focus on understanding how we can grow humanity as a whole in a sustainable way. So it's not the what, it's more the how. And it's kind of difficult to kind of find your way through all the advertisements and marketing that's going on. So resilience can be to find alternative ways to that. And the third question made us think of the Palgrave United Church and the Palgrave Community Kitchen as bodies that we identify in Palgrave with this resilience.
That's great. Well done for answering all the three questions. You can go home with the prize. I'm not sure what that is, but of acknowledging that you answered those three questions. So fantastic. Okay, I think perhaps now it's 9:04, so we should wrap things up. If you have any further questions, please don't hesitate to email me, the info@oriasnetwork.org. I will be getting in touch with you fairly soon to arrange another date for our next workshop, which will be in February, which I will hope you would all feel that you would come to. There'll be a lot more talking this time rather than listening, because we want to hear about your stories and what you think about climate change and resilience in Palgrave. I'd like now to just thank the speakers for today. It was really, really great to have you guys along. So thanks to you all for coming. And, really thanks to everybody who took the time out of their evening to join us here. I really hope it's been informative and an interesting event. I'll probably send you out. Oh, there was one other thing, which was I sent you all a questionnaire as well. It's actually a pre-workshop questionnaire. If you could answer it as if you hadn't had this workshop, that would be really good. Just pretend. But as if you could do that before, if you could do it before the next workshop, that would also be great. So that's all for this evening. Thank you so much for attending, and I really look forward to seeing you at our second Resilient Palgrave workshop.
Thanks, Jim.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Good night.
Bye.